He was just trying to get in and out of Walmart before the lunch rush. Aisle 7 smelled like cheap detergent and fried regret, typical Saturday chaos. Mark Jacobs, 48, former construction manager turned delivery driver, was running on caffeine and stubborn pride. He'd had better years, ones with vacations, barbecues, and fewer bills marked final notice. But today wasn't about him. It was about the woman in front of him. She stood at the checkout, fumbling with a purse that had seen better decades. Her groceries were mostly basics: bread, milk, a few cans of soup, and a pack of crayons. The cashier announced the total, $147.63. The woman froze. Her hands trembled as she started counting quarters, nickels, dimes, each one hitting the counter like a little confession of how hard life had been. The people behind her sighed. Someone muttered, "Come on, lady." Mark hated that. He'd been there once, embarrassed, invisible, praying no one was watching. So, before his conscience could argue, he stepped forward, slid his card, and said softly, "Don't worry, ma'am. I've got it." She looked up, startled. Her eyes, pale gray, almost silver, met his. For a moment, she just stared, like she was trying to memorize his face. Then she whispered, "Thank you." So quietly he almost missed it. He smiled, shrugged it off, and left before it got awkward. Just a small act of kindness, right? He'd forget about it by the next day, except he didn't. Because 2 weeks later, Mark's life would flip upside down on a stage under bright lights in front of people he never imagined meeting. And the same woman, the one with trembling hands and faded clothes, would be standing right there. Only this time, she wouldn't be holding a grocery bag. She'd be holding a microphone, and the world would know who she really was. Crazy how life works, huh? One swipe of a debit card, and destiny quietly changes lanes. But before we get to that stage, let's rewind a bit to who Mark Jacobs really was before that day at Walmart. Because this story didn't start with a receipt. It started years earlier, with loss, pride, and one man's slow fall from comfort to survival. So grab a seat. Welcome, story lovers. Where are you watching from? Drop your city name in the comments. Let's see how far this story travels. Before that Walmart moment, before the applause, before anyone cared who she was, there was Evelyn Hart. Back then, she wasn't the woman people whispered about on the news or searched for online. She was just Mrs. Hart from the edge of town, the quiet widow who worked 2 jobs and kept to herself. Evelyn grew up in a small Ohio town, the kind where everyone knew everyone's business by lunchtime. Her parents owned a modest hardware store, the kind that smelled of sawdust and old paint cans. Life wasn't fancy, but it was steady. She was smart, top of her class, sharp with numbers and endlessly curious. Her teachers used to say she had a banker's brain and a poet's heart. Evelyn wanted to study business and start her own company one day. Something honest, something that would make her parents proud. But dreams have a way of colliding with real life. College was expensive. Her father fell ill just before she graduated high school. Medical bills piled up like bricks on her chest. So instead of chasing dreams, Evelyn chased paychecks. She got a job at a local diner, waitressing 12-hour shifts with a fake smile and sore feet. Still, she saved every tip, every quarter. Her plan was simple: 1 year of work, then college. But 1 year became 2, and then came Tom. Tom Hart, charming, ambitious, the kind of man who could talk his way into any room and out of any responsibility. He promised her the world, said he'd build a future where she'd never have to struggle again. And for a while, he made good on that promise. They bought a small house, had a son, Jacob, and life looked almost perfect. But perfection has cracks. When the economy crashed in 2008, Tom lost his sales job. The pressure got to him. The drinking started. The arguments followed. Then one night he simply didn't come home. No note, no goodbye. Just an empty closet and a frozen joint account. Evelyn was left with a 6-year-old boy, a mortgage, and $23 in the bank. That was the night she stopped dreaming. She picked up 2 jobs, cleaning offices by day and stocking shelves at a grocery store by night. Sleep became a rumor. Her hands were constantly raw from bleach, her back stiff from hours on her feet. But Jacob always had dinner, clean clothes, and a mother who never let him see her cry. Still, she cried plenty. Mostly in the laundry room, where the sound of the dryer muffled everything. Her friends drifted away. The church ladies offered prayers, but no help. The neighbors smiled with pity. She got used to being invisible, the kind of person people thank without really looking at, but even in survival mode, Evelyn never stopped learning. Late at night, after Jacob fell asleep, she'd sit by the flickering glow of her old laptop, watching free business lectures on YouTube. She'd jot notes on the back of grocery receipts, ideas, quotes, anything to remind herself she still had a brain worth using. Her old degree plan, yellowed and wrinkled, stayed taped to the refrigerator. A silent promise she couldn't quite let go. Then came Jacob's illness. It started as a cough, then fevers that wouldn't break. After endless tests, the doctors diagnosed a rare immune condition. The treatment wasn't deadly, but the bills nearly were. Insurance covered half. The rest? She had to figure out. Evelyn sold her wedding ring, her mother's necklace, even her car. She started walking 3 miles to work each way. When the grocery store offered extra hours, she took them, even if it meant sleeping only 2 hours a night. She didn't complain. Not once. Her mantra became simple. Just one more day. We'll make it one more day. Over time, her son got better. Slowly, miraculously. But the medical debt didn't heal. It grew like mold. By the time Jacob turned 12, Evelyn owed nearly $40,000. Creditors called daily. Some days she unplugged the phone just to have silence. Yet there were small mercies. Jacob excelled in school, often telling his teachers his mom was the smartest person alive. Evelyn never corrected him, though she didn't believe it anymore. On Sundays, they'd share pancakes made from scratch and laugh about how normal people must live, vacations, savings, a working car. Humor became their lifeline. Still, deep down, Evelyn carried shame. Not for being poor, but for believing she'd failed. Every dream she'd ever had, college, business, independence, was buried under overdue bills and exhaustion. Then, one winter, she got a letter. Her cleaning contract at the corporate office, her highest-paying gig, was being terminated. Budget cuts. It was her breaking point. She didn't have enough for next month's rent, and Jacob's school fees were due. That week, she walked into Walmart with a list of only the bare essentials: bread, rice, milk, and crayons. The crayons were for Jacob. His birthday was coming up, and she couldn't afford anything else. As she counted coins at the register, praying the total would somehow come out lower, she felt eyes on her. She didn't know it then, but that man, the stranger who quietly paid her bill, would unknowingly open the next chapter of her life. It wasn't charity that saved her that day. It was dignity, the kind she thought she'd lost. Because for the first time in years, someone didn't look down on her. Someone just helped. No pity, no judgment, no strings. And that moment, small, forgettable to everyone else, would set off a chain of events that would change both their lives forever. But fate doesn't rush. It whispers, waits, and unfolds when you least expect it. The Walmart moment could have easily been forgotten. For Mark, it was just another day, another stop between deliveries, another kind gesture in a world that rarely paused for one. He didn't think twice about it afterward. Maybe deep down he didn't want to, because thinking about her, the trembling woman with the silver-gray eyes, reminded him too much of himself. But life, as it turns out, has a wicked sense of timing. 2 weeks later, Mark's company announced layoffs. Automation upgrades, they said. Nothing personal. He had seniority, sure, but seniority didn't pay bills when the company was bleeding cash. He left the meeting numb, clutching his severance letter like it might change if he just stared long enough. He drove home in silence, the radio low, his thoughts louder than ever. How do you start over at 48? What do you even put on a resume when your last decade was spent hauling packages and pretending you were fine? That night, he scrolled job listings until the screen blurred. Delivery driver, warehouse loader, security guard, all minimum pay, all dead ends. Then something caught his eye, a flyer for a local community event. Rebuild America, Small Business Recovery Program, sponsored by Heart Foundation. Mark laughed softly to himself. Heart Foundation? He muttered. Must be some rich family with a guilt complex. Still, the flyer said they were hiring drivers for the event setup team, temporary work, decent pay. And he needed the money, so he signed up. The next Saturday morning, the convention center buzzed with organized chaos. Volunteers rushing, banners being hung, speakers rehearsing. Mark backed a truck full of donation boxes to the rear entrance and began unloading. That's when he saw her. Same silver-gray eyes, same quiet posture, except this time she wasn't wearing a faded coat and second-hand shoes. She wore a tailored navy dress, her hair pulled back neatly, clipboard in hand. People addressed her with respect, even nervousness. Ms. Hart, the microphones are ready. Ms. Hart, do you want to review the slides before the governor arrives? Mark froze, box in hand. Ms. Hart? It took him a second to connect the dots. Evelyn Hart, the poor woman from Walmart. The one he'd quietly helped without expecting a thank you. She wasn't a struggling customer anymore. She was the face on the banner. Evelyn Hart, founder and director, Heart Foundation. He set the box down carefully, unsure whether to laugh or panic. What were the odds? Evelyn hadn't forgotten him either. She spotted him from across the room, the man who had saved her that humiliating day when her world was at its smallest. For a split second, her breath caught. The memory hit like a flash of light, the sound of coins on a counter, the warmth of a stranger's kindness. She watched him now, moving carefully, respectfully, helping other volunteers without complaint. No ego, no need to be seen, just steady hands doing quiet work, and for some reason, it moved her. Because Evelyn had built the Heart Foundation not for recognition, but redemption. After the Walmart incident, something in her shifted. That stranger's small act had reminded her of human decency, something she hadn't felt in years. She used that spark to rebuild her purpose. A few weeks after that encounter, she had found a folder buried deep in her old laptop, her unfinished business plan. Heart Hope Initiative. It was supposed to be a small community resource hub, helping single parents learn budgeting, digital skills, and small business management. Back then, she'd dismissed it as a fantasy. But that day in Walmart, she'd realized someone had once shown her mercy. Maybe she could pass it forward, and she did. Slowly, painfully, one sleepless night at a time. She pitched her idea to local sponsors, endured endless rejections, and survived on Grant coffee and grit. But Evelyn was relentless. 3 years later, the Heart Foundation became one of the fastest-growing nonprofit networks in Ohio, teaching financial literacy, creating jobs, and giving back to those who'd been forgotten. She'd gone from counting coins to signing checks. But she never forgot the man who'd restored her belief in people, and now he was standing right in front of her. Mr. Jacobs, right? She asked later that afternoon, her voice steady but kind. He turned startled. Yeah, Mark, you remember me? Of course, she said softly. Walmart. A few years ago. You helped me that day. Mark's ears burned. Oh, that. It was nothing. She smiled. That same quiet, grateful smile he remembered. Nothing, she repeated. Funny how the smallest nothings can change everything. She offered him a position, temporary logistics manager for her next project. Short-term contract, she said. But full pay and benefits. You deserve a break, he hesitated. Was this pity? Charity in disguise? But the sincerity in her eyes said otherwise. Still, as Mark accepted the offer, whispers began to swirl. Not everyone liked him there. One of the senior coordinators, Daniel Reese, sharp suit, sharper ego, saw Mark as an unqualified outsider. She hires some random driver and suddenly he's running logistics? Daniel sneered in the break room. Cute charity project, huh? Mark ignored it. He'd been underestimated his whole life, but Evelyn saw potential others didn't. She noticed his efficiency, his ideas, his natural leadership. Yet Daniel wasn't done. He started sabotaging small tasks, mislabeling shipments, forwarding wrong schedules, and then blaming Mark for errors. Soon, upper management began to question if Evelyn's charitable hire was a mistake. Evelyn faced a dilemma: defend the man who once helped her or protect the foundation's image. It tore at her. This organization was her lifeline, her legacy, but Mark represented the kind of faith that built it. Then came the audit. One evening, Mark discovered invoices for equipment that didn't exist, nearly $30,000 in discrepancies. He cross-checked the data and realized someone inside was siphoning funds. He could have ignored it. He needed this job badly, but he'd been through enough to know that silence only protects the guilty. So he brought it to Evelyn. When she saw the documents, her stomach turned. Daniel's name was on several approvals. It was déjà vu, another moment where she could choose comfort or courage. Years ago, she'd stayed quiet when Tom walked out, when employers underpaid her, when life demanded obedience. Not this time. That night, Evelyn drafted a report for the board. She attached every receipt, every timestamp, every truth Mark uncovered. By morning, Daniel was escorted out, his arrogance replaced by disbelief. But it wasn't over. A reporter at the local news outlet caught wind of the story. Hart Foundation whistleblower exposes fraud. Anonymous tip saves thousands in charity funds. Anonymous. Because Evelyn refused to take the credit. She let Mark stay unseen, his name never mentioned. It wasn't about revenge or reward. It was about protecting the quiet kind of integrity, the same kind he showed at that Walmart counter. Still, inside her, something had reignited, a strange gratitude mixed with awe. How poetic, she thought. The man who once gave her dignity had now saved her foundation. Fate had a way of circling back. And this time it wasn't done yet, because what neither of them knew was that someone powerful had been watching their story unfold and would soon bring both of their lives into the spotlight in a way neither could have imagined. The next morning, the entire corporate floor buzzed with tension. Rumors had already begun swirling, something about financial inconsistencies. Ruth, dressed in her plain uniform, moved quietly between offices, pushing her cart like any other day. But inside, her heart was a thunderstorm. She had sent the email. She had proof. And now there was no turning back. By noon, the summons came. "Ruth Miller, the board wants to see you." Her mop handle nearly slipped from her hand. The same boardroom she used to clean every night now awaited her as a guest, or maybe as the enemy. When she walked in, the contrast hit hard. Polished marble table, leather chairs, men and women in tailored suits. They looked at her as if she didn't belong. Maybe she didn't, but she had something none of them had: the truth. "Excuse me, this is a closed meeting," barked Mr. Keller, the CFO. His tone dripped with arrogance. Ruth didn't flinch. "You might want to open it," she said quietly, placing a folded napkin on the table. The executives frowned, then leaned closer. Numbers, columns, totals, balances, written in pen, the same messy handwriting that once filled her old college notebooks. "This," Ruth said steadily, "is your missing $4.2 million. And before you think about deleting files or rewriting reports, copies have already been sent to the IRS, SEC, and Channel 7. The room froze. No one spoke. Even the CEO's jaw went slack. The only sound was the ticking of the wall clock. Then came the explosion. "You're accusing us of fraud?" Keller barked, standing up, face red with fury. "You're a janitor. You don't even understand what you're looking at." Ruth's eyes burned, but her voice stayed calm. "I understand perfectly. I used to be top of my accounting class before life got in the way. Before bills. Before hospital nights. Before I had to scrub floors to survive." Gasps rippled across the table. The CEO leaned forward. "You were an accountant?" "I am an accountant," she corrected softly, "just without the title." The projector flickered to life as she connected a flash drive. On the screen appeared spreadsheets, bank records, and internal emails, the same ones they thought were hidden. Each number told a story of greed, deceit, and betrayal. "You funneled funds through shell accounts," Ruth said, labeled them as marketing expenses, but the totals didn't add up. "I checked. Twice." The boardroom turned silent again, but this time it wasn't disbelief. It was fear. Real fear. The kind that crawls up your spine when you know you've been caught. Finally, the CEO spoke. "Ruth, how did you even notice?" She interrupted. "Because you left the laptop open in the same room I clean every night. Guess the janitor wasn't invisible after all." One of the female board members covered her mouth. The CFO slumped into his chair, speechless. Security was called, not for Ruth, but for Keller. Cameras were already waiting outside. News vans had arrived. The story was breaking in real time. As she stepped out of that boardroom, reporters shouted her name. "Ms. Miller! Is it true you uncovered a multi-million-dollar fraud?" Ruth paused at the doorway, the same door she'd mopped for years, and smiled faintly. "I just cleaned up one last mess." That was the day the woman everyone overlooked became the most powerful person in the room. Ruth didn't stay. The company tried to make things right, offering her a senior accounting position, a salary she could never have dreamed of. But she declined gently. "I didn't fight to sit at your table," she said. "I fought so others wouldn't be stepped on trying to reach it." She took the whistleblower reward and walked away, not out of anger, but peace. For the first time in years, she could breathe without counting every dollar. The weight that had sat on her chest for so long, poverty, fear, invisibility, finally began to lift. In the months that followed, Ruth used that money to open a small office downtown. A glass door, a single desk, and a sign that read, "Miller Forensic Consulting. Integrity has no price." She didn't hire experts from elite universities. She hired single mothers, women who'd been told they weren't enough, people who had worked night shifts and still dared to dream. Ruth trained them herself patiently, passionately. "Numbers tell stories," she'd say, "and we're here to make sure no one lies in theirs again." Her clients grew, from small businesses to Fortune 500 companies. But Ruth never changed. She still packed her own lunch, still called her son every evening, still believed kindness was the highest form of intelligence. Her son, Daniel, was thriving too. The boy who once struggled to breathe in hospital rooms was now at the top of his class, studying economics on a full scholarship. He'd tell his friends, "My mom's the reason I believe in second chances." One spring afternoon, Ruth visited the old Walmart, the same one where her story began. She didn't go for publicity. She went because memories have roots. She walked down the aisles, smiling softly at the sight of a young mother counting coins at the register, her hands trembling the way Ruth's once had. Without a word, Ruth stepped forward and quietly covered the bill. The woman looked up, eyes wide. Why would you do that?" Ruth smiled. "Because someone once did the same for me. No cameras, no witnesses. Just two women, linked by compassion and fate. Today, when Ruth walks into a room, people don't look past her anymore. They listen. Her words carry weight, her presence commands respect. She doesn't need a title to prove her worth. Her story already did that. Sometimes, late at night, she sits by her office window watching the city lights flicker below. The world feels gentler now, like it's finally catching up to the goodness she always carried. She thinks of her younger self, tired, invisible, cleaning floors, and whispers, "We made it." Ruth Miller, once the janitor no one noticed, became the voice that changed everything. Not just for herself, but for countless others who had been silenced by circumstance. And maybe that's what redemption truly looks like. Not revenge, not glory, just peace, purpose, and the quiet knowing that the story ended exactly how it was meant to. Thanks for watching. If Ruth's journey touched your heart, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories that remind us no act of kindness ever goes unseen.